Now, the next thing, the three-parts policy that they had adopted there, the second one was to find a way of being able to get total control of people's minds. And that would be done by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introduce it as a new science for the benefit of mankind. Now, the time came when Lucifer decided that he had to choose a person to initiate this thing. And Franz Mesmer, which was an Austrian physician, was chosen. Mesmer originated a theory called animal magnetism, later on named mesmerism. Mesmer was led by the spirits to believe, and this is what a priest said, was led by the spirits to believe that certain persons have a magnetic influence within themselves, so to speak, that would cause them to have great power over other persons, even to the point of placing them into a trance. And at that time, that was readily accepted by people in general.
Oh, it was just thin claps. It's thinning out. See, we got weak jellyback pastors now. They ain't gonna stand up and say, boy, you don't get in the club and then come up in here with no stamp on your hand playing my organ. All them spirits you harboring and bringing up in here. Well, we can go to the club and be saved. I can take Christ to the club. People don't even know what the club was created for. Club was created by a man last name Mesmer. That's where we get the word mesmerize, who taught induced hypnosis. And he wanted to find a way to actually hypnotize somebody without actually putting a spell on them. So what they did was they created what they called a sanctuary, which we call the club now. It's a sanctuary. What they would do is they would flash the lights at a certain rhythmic pattern. They would have the low bass booming beat at a certain pattern to throw your biorhythms off and throw your heart off sync. Because once your heart beats at a certain rate. Once your heartbeat is thrown off, then you're not oxygenated properly. Once you're not oxygenated properly, you begin to lose your ability to reason. So these guys figured if we get them in the club and play the music loud enough, we won't even need drugs in there. We'll just have musical drugs. We'll make them lose temporary consciousness. We'll make them lose time. See, they go in the club and be partying and breaking it down for 4 or 5 hours and look at the watch. It was been 4 hours, man. And they lose time because they've lost, because the music has captivated them. The lights flashing has captivated them. It was all a part of a plan to manipulate you. The Bible calls that witchcraft. Yeah, and then once you're in there and you open yourself up subliminally or subconsciously to these beats and these lights and different things, you've opened yourself up for demonic infestation. Because it's still spiritual. Everything you do in the natural has a spiritual consequence. Don't be no fool. See, I'm not the type of person just tell you don't do nothing. Don't go to the club. Christian ain't supposed to be at a club. No, I go stand before God and say, tell me, God, now what's wrong with the club so I can go tell your people? And I tell you what's wrong with the club. The club was created to steal your consciousness, to steal your ability to reason, to steal your ability to think like a regular person.
If you put someone in a position of being disabled by not feeding them or not allowing them to sleep or overwhelming them with sound, if you use massive shock treatment and you give people massive doses of drugs and put them in periods of darkness where they can't predict from one minute to another what is going to happen next, there's no consistency to sort of what's going to happen, anybody can be put in a position of being open to brainwashing. Ewan Cameron was probably the foremost psychiatrist of his time. He was using high-tech sound techniques. He was using multiple kinds of loop recorders to force people to listen to recorded messages 24 hours a day for weeks on end to basically destroy people's thinking patterns.
Hypnosis as we know it today had its origins in the unique medical practices of Dr. Franz Mesmer, a physician who lived in Vienna, Austria during the mid-18th century. Mesmer was a fervent believer in the more esoteric aspects of Western medical tradition. In the late 1770s, Mesmer moved to Paris and found more interested students there than in Vienna. The process of animal magnetism, or mesmerism, laid the foundations for the later development of hypnosis. A contemporary English doctor described Mesmer's technique in vivid detail. His patients were received with the air of mystery and studied effect. The apartment, hung with mirrors, was dimly lit. A profound silence was observed, broken only by strains of music which occasionally floated through the rooms. The patients were seated around a sort of vat which contained a heterogeneous mixture of chemical ingredients. With this and with each other, they were placed in relation by means of cords or jointed rods or by holding hands, and among them slowly and mysteriously moved Mesmer himself, affecting one by a touch, another by a look, a third by passes with his hand, a fourth by pointing with a rod. One person became hysterical, then another. One was seized with catalepsy, others with convulsions, some with palpitations of the heart, perspirations, and other bodily disturbances. The method was supposed to provoke in the sick person exactly the kind of action beneficial to his recovery. To the uninitiated, the scene was full of wonderment. The extraordinary tales of Mesmer's personal power over individuals are probably part exaggeration, part real results of his confidence and skill in the use of the means he wielded. By the mid-1780s, Mesmer's dramatic practices had drawn the amazement and scrutiny of the citizens of Paris, including the King Louis XVI himself, who commissioned a panel of renowned scientists to examine animal magnetism as fact or fiction once and for all.
I think it's true that there's the brain, there are neurons firing, and there's the mind. Okay, but regarding the mind itself, we have barely scratched the surface of how it works. What do you mean by creativity? What do you mean by consciousness? What do you mean by self-awareness?
Scientists now understand how much of the brain works inside the skull, but are still trying to discover how the mind can affect the world outside of its casing. In Paris, medical astrologer Franz Mesmer stumbled almost by accident upon hypnosis. At the time, Mesmer was experimenting with magnets as a means of curing illness. Mesmer first believed that the magnets exerted the invisible force of animal magnetism. Later, he felt that the force emanated from within him, and he abandoned the magnets. In actuality, Mesmer had only rediscovered another lost occult art. The first induced hypnotic performance, recorded on papyrus in a British museum, was given at the court of Khufu in Egypt over 5,000 years ago. Later, seers at the Greek oracle of Delphi used self-hypnosis to foresee the future.
Modern hypnosis, as practiced in the United States, begins with Franz Mesmer. But if you go back even further, every culture has a way of going into a trance. It could be using music, it could be using dance, it could be sitting in meditation.
His treatment became popular in the 1770s, and Mesmer's fame quickly spread as scores of patients claimed themselves cured through mesmerism. He had laid the foundation for modern hypnosis, a practice that is now accepted as a form of treatment by the medical establishment. Hypnosis relies on suggestibility, imagination.
Our bodies can't distinguish between a real and imagined experience. For example, there was a recent study done with anger and heart disease. How researchers got people angry is they had them imagine situations that made them angry. And so just as they imagined themselves angry, their body responded as if they were actually had reason, cause to be angry, and there was a change that they were able to identify. But the real beauty of this experiment was the power of the imagination. Our imaginations can make us angry, or our imaginations can make us happy and peaceful. Whether we're angry or whether we're happy is our choice.
An entire field of alternative medicine has developed that utilizes imagining techniques to promote healing.
There are over 22 studies done on visualization and cancer healing. 18 of those studies conclusively shows visualization helps fight cancer.